to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield. My name is Carol Spear, and my husband Bob and I have been a part of this great community for over 6 years. UUFN is an inclusive community that nurtures spiritual and intellectual growth and fosters ethical and social responsibility. If you are a visitor, either on site or online, we are glad you are with us, and we invite you to stay after the service to get acquainted. We welcome your questions and look forward to getting to know you. Later in the service today, we will take our Share the Plate offering as a way to care for the wider world. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Side with Love. Side with Love is a public advocacy campaign sponsored by the Unitarian Universalist Association that seeks to harness love's power to stop oppression. They have 4 focus areas: climate justice, decriminalization, voting rights, and bodily autonomy. During the offering later, you may put cash or a check in the basket or donate online from our website, uunorthfield.org. If your check is for your pledge, simply write pledge on the memo line. There will also be instructions on the screen during the offertory time. I also call your attention to the announcements in your order of service and weekly email. There you'll find more information about getting help with taking your photo for our new online membership directory, the UU Common Read Book study starting this Thursday evening on Zoom, and our soup supper this Friday. Today after the service, join the Building Visions team for another information session. The team will give an update on what we know about pricing for a potential building addition and the process for deciding if we do a capital campaign this spring. All are invited to attend and learn more. Join us next Sunday for Becoming Light, the Transforming Power of Story with Paul Krause. He will be joined by Barbara Krause as worship associate, the UUFN choir, and Laura Upham Gerber. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Northfield.
Good morning, all. I am the Reverend Sara Smalley, she, her pronouns. I serve this congregation as its minister. It is good to gather in community today. Our call to worship is Belonging by the poet Rosemary Watola Trommer. And if it's true we are alone together. The way blades of grass are alone but exist as a field. Sometimes I feel it, the green fuse that ignites us, the wild thrum that unites us, the inner hum that reminds us of our shared humanity. Just as 35 trillion red blood cells join in one body to become one blood, just as 136,000 notes make up one symphony, alone as we are, our small voices weave into one big conversation. Our actions are essential to the one infinite story of what it is to be alive. When we feel alone, we belong to the grand communion of those who sometimes feel alone. We are the dust that hopes, a rising of dust, a thrill of dust, the dust that dances in the light with all the other dust, the dust that makes the world. We are the dust that hopes, rises, thrills, dances, that makes the world. Come, let us worship together.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, a beacon of hope that lights the path of love and justice. Each Sunday when we gather, we bring this symbol of life together. Please join me in speaking the words for the lighting of the chalice. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. Please rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
You may be seated. Some background about the theme of our worship service today, the right to flourish, which will be especially helpful background for newcomers, but there's also some late breaking news for those who have been following along with the Article 2 changes that I'll share. The background. This summer, delegates to the annual meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Association will vote on whether to change our association's bylaws that now include the 7 principles articulated in 1985 to a set of values with love at the center. This is known as the proposed Article 2 changes, since Article 2 of the UUA bylaws is where this articulation of our shared covenant is found. You can see the proposed values on the cover of your order of service, or if you're online, the order of service is attached to the weekly email. But here's the late breaking news. 2 additional values have progressed through the amendments process and have met the criteria to be added as amendments. Delegates to this summer's General Assembly will vote on them separately in June, either voting to add them to the Article 2 proposal or not. The 2 additional proposed values are peace and reason. More on those this spring when we figure out where we're going to fit those in to preach about, because there's lots to say about both. Today, though, we are focusing on the value of equity, which also has a proposed amendment this month. The original language from the proposed Article 2 reads, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Or, this is the wording of the proposed amendment that delegates will vote on, equity. We declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Equity calls us to listen, understand, respect, and respond to one another. To be clear, it is not our task in worship today to debate whether the amended language is better than the original. Even though I have opinions, you may have opinions. Or where we might disagree with or wordsmith the language of either, but to continue our spiritual practice of seeing what we might learn from the proposed Article 2 and how it might inform and inspire us as Unitarian Universalists. Both versions include this idea, equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish. Some of you might be familiar with some version of this image. There are lots of versions of this image, and none of them are perfect, but it highlights some important distinctions. It starts in reality, where some have far more than they need, more than is even comfortable, and others start in a metaphorical hole in the ground. It moves to equality, where everyone gets equal treatment. Assistance is evenly distributed, and everyone gets the same box, whether they need it or not. This is equal treatment, but it's not fair. Equity is a huge improvement. Each person gets what they need. They are seen and honored as individuals. And then there is liberation, where instead of trying for behind-the-scenes incremental fixes, the barrier itself is removed. Liberation, which is maybe the value of justice in the proposed Article 2 changes, and maybe it's a way to say we all have the right to flourish. In that last frame, all three figures are not only able to see, they are all showing joy. They are celebrating. Even the person who had previously been towering above the others on top of far too many boxes has changed into shorts and seems happier. Here, there is no barrier to access, no barrier to community. All three are grounded and connected and participating. Today, we consider what are the barriers to flourishing, and how can we each do our unique part to knock them down? As we move into our time of joys and sorrows, will you take a breath with me? It is our practice in this community to pause every week to get in touch with the truths of our lives, our grief and our gratitude, our hopes and our fears. What is true for you this week? What is lifting you up and what is weighing you down? In the presence of a love that abides, we use our chalice flame to light our candles of community. We light our first candle as a blessing for the wider world. Earlier this month, Nex Benedict died after being assaulted. We don't know the specifics. We are told over and over there will be a full investigation. What we do know is Nex was 16 years old. Nex was 16 years old and non-binary. They loved nature and enjoyed drawing, reading, and playing Minecraft. They had a cat, Zeus, whom they loved. They were part of the Choctaw Nation. What we do know is Nex had been brutally bullied for their gender for at least a year, and then viciously beaten inside a bathroom at their high school in Oklahoma. They died the next day. Nex, we grieve your death, and we wish you could have known how much we love you. We light this candle in your memory, a candle that proclaims our love and care for you and for all transgender and gender expansive children, youth, adults, and elders. We know too that the details of our daily lives are sacred and important, and it is sacred to share them. We now light a candle for all of the simple joys that are sustaining us, and we light another candle in honor of the sorrows and hardships we may be carrying. Honor of the joys and sorrows we carry in our hearts, but that have not been spoken out loud. May the arms of this community hold all our joys and sorrows, those named and those that remain silent, close to our hearts. May we be transformed by the spirit of life and love, with warmth to celebrate our joys and with gentleness to soothe our aching hearts as we enter into the silence we now share. Amen, and blessed be.
Sing in my heart.
Our reading is from Minneapolis spoken word poet Kyle Guante Tran Myrie. In this piece, he imagines if history had gone differently and there had been a nuclear war. He imagines a number of possible futures for himself in this post-apocalyptic world. This is from his piece, Survival is Not a Fortress, It is a Garden. In one life, I wore a suit of armor and drowned in the river. In one life, I hoarded food and choked on it. In one life, the basement was so full of boxes of bullets, a tornado came and I had nowhere to go, no shelter. I emptied clip after clip into the wind. Which is not to say that I never survived, just that my survival in every reality where it is possible never belongs to me. I see myself, 40, not a dual-wielding bandit warlord, just a neighbor sitting in some community meeting, because how many of our ancestors have already taught us, even after the world ends, there is work to do. I see myself in that work, not the leader, not a lone wolf, just part of the pack. Because in every universe in which I am alive, it is because of other people, and I don't always like them, but I love them. In every universe in which I am alive, it is less because I could fight and more because I could forgive, because I could cooperate, because I could apologize, because I could dance, because I could grow pumpkins in my backyard and leave them at my neighbor's door, asking nothing in return. In every universe in which I am alive, I am holding a first aid kit, a solar panel, a sleeping cat, never a rusty battle axe or rocket launcher. Sure, maybe sometimes a chainsaw, but only for firewood. I'm holding a cooking pot, a teddy bear, a photo album, a basketball, a bouquet of flowers. Survival is not a fortress, it is a garden. Survival is not a siren, it is a symphony. And yes, we fight for it sometimes, but survival is not the fight. It is the healing after. Clean water washing away the blood, the soft hum of someone you trust applying the bandage, the feeling of falling asleep in a safe place. We will now gratefully give and receive our Share the Plate offering for the Side with Love campaign. We proudly have a Side with Love banner hanging on the side of our building. This month, we share our generosity with them as they work to unleash love's power in the world. This is one way we make our care for the world tangible. Will the ushers please come forward to receive our offering?
question of what it means to flourish as a human has been around for eons, according to a recent article by Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Quote, in ancient Greece, circa 300 BC, the philosopher Aristotle first coined the term flourishing and defined it as the way we are supposed to be as human beings. The notion of Aristotelian virtue ethics was founded on the premise that all people have the potential for virtue and character excellence. The thing to do is to cultivate moments of meaning and virtuous action, no matter how small, in daily life. Flourishing, according to Aristotle, goes beyond happiness. It is the opposite of languishing. It includes elements of both contentment and purpose. Flourishing is not a state of mind, but a way of active living. The Human Flourishing Program at Harvard University, because of course they have a Human Flourishing Program, has identified 6 domains of flourishing: happiness and life satisfaction, mental and physical health, meaning and purpose, character and virtue, financial and material stability, close social relationships. They note, and these 6 domains underscore, that flourishing does not occur in a vacuum, but in the context of society. In other words, human flourishing, rooted in Aristotelian ethics, is the ability to live a good life of meaning and purpose, to bring forth your own virtuous action while your mental health, your physical well-being, and your relationships are all held and honored. Maybe this is why I love the word flourish as a foundational theological touchstone, that as Unitarian Universalists, it is foundational to our faith that we believe in the right to flourish. Isn't that why people come to church? To flourish, not just live. This idea of the right to flourish isn't some abstract Aristotelian concept for me right now, though. For the past few weeks, I have been working with 2 young adults who have had extraordinarily challenging lives. Crushing trauma, poverty, addiction, and isolation were a part of their everyday experiences. Do these 2 young adults not have that same right to flourish as someone born into a family wealthy with money and love? They have had 0 of the 6 domains of Harvard's human flourishing met. It breaks my heart, and it makes me so angry that they have been given so little when others have been given so much. Sometimes it's hard to have hope, to keep the faith, to look around at the horrors of this world and remember flourishing is possible. Next, Benedict should be here to flourish, but the world didn't even grant them survival. Over the last week, I've also been drinking tea with my cat curled up in my lap and reading the cozy little science fiction book, Psalm for the Wild Built. In this book, humanity has narrowly avoided disaster and collapse and is flourishing, not in a capitalist, extravagant sort of way, but a world where kindness to humanity and to the earth are what sustains. The main character is a non-binary monk who lives their faith in service to their God, Alale, the God of small comforts. Their name is Dex. Dex. Next. I want our world to be different. Psalm for the Wild Built is a book that challenges the current social order by offering an alternative future. It lends itself to our imagination and offers gentleness and hope. It says, this could be our world. We could make this our world. Because in every universe in which I am alive, it is because of other people. Survival is not a fortress, it is a garden. Survival is not a siren, it is a symphony. Alone as we are, our small voices weave into one big conversation. Our actions are essential to the one infinite story of what it is to be alive. I think this is why some of the most deeply spiritual moments in my life were when I was actively engaged in the work of social justice. Screaming and crying in protest and grief at George Floyd Square, testifying at the state capitol in favor of same-sex marriage, or addressing the Minneapolis City Council on behalf of sexual assault survivors or against conversion therapy, wearing my clergy collar at a reproductive rights rally when someone ran up to me and handed me a sign to hold that said, "Keep your theology off my biology." That visible public witness energizes me and reminds me of how powerful collective action can be. I get hope from other people in those moments. But I, can so easily idealize these big gestures that we minimize other ways of changing the world. Dorcas Chang Tozan, the author of Social Justice for the Sensitive Soul, How to Change the World in Quiet Ways, calls this the activist ideal. The idea that those of us who care about social justice must be bold and fearless and loud at all times throughout our entire lives. She explains. Somewhere along the way, I developed a clear picture in my mind of who I had to be in order to be an effective change agent. I wanted to be the activist ideal, an unflinching advocate for the marginalized and suffering. I wanted to be an unceasing voice calling for change loudly, compellingly, and articulately. I wanted to challenge powerful people, bring down unjust systems, and break cycles of poverty, violence, and corruption. And she did. She was the activist ideal. Until she experienced the devastating toll of burnout, true burnout, where all of the trauma and the striving and the never-ending work changed her brain and her nervous system, and she shut down and could no longer power through and do any of the work she wanted to do in the world. Again, her words. I used to assume that when I was younger, that being an activist meant I needed to be all in. I needed to be on the front lines. I needed to be with the suffering, and I needed to suffer myself and give everything towards the cause. I spent years trying to be an idealized version of myself, working long hours, pushing myself into challenging roles, never saying no, and regularly placing myself in contexts that petrified me. When my body communicated stress, I ignored it. I didn't listen to my heart when it ached from pain, sorrow, exhaustion. I didn't listen to my heart when it ached from pain, sorrow, exhaustion. This is not flourishing. Chang Tozan is a self-described sensitive soul, defined by her as including those who consider themselves highly emotional, empathic, or introverted. I am all three, and I know there are many in this room who fit one or more of those categories. Those of us who feel things deeply, who are highly empathetic, and or who are introverts. I admit for me, it was a relief to think my sensitive heart could be an asset to my social justice work instead of a liability. I don't need to toughen up and power through more. I need to reimagine what it means for me to engage in the work of social justice. Chang Towson doesn't mean that as sensitive souls, we're absolved from the work of publicly declaring our values when necessary, or that we always get to stay safe inside of our comfort zones. Quite the opposite, actually. Her reframing of social justice invites each of us to engage more deeply in this work instead of leaving it only to the ideal activists. This reimagining allows me to let go of the activist guilt that I'm not doing social justice right if I'm not out front on every issue all the time. And letting go of that guilt makes me more likely to do the work I can do. It's not an either-or proposition. It's not being at the front of the march, in the thick of the action, or on the sidelines entirely removed. The Talmud states, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief." And that is a challenge to those of us with sensitive souls. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. We are a congregation that year after year talks about wanting to be more and more involved in social change. As Reverend Laura Smidzik says, newcomers are attracted to our faith because social action is part of our call. We are an active faith, a lived faith. So what does that all look like when we realize that a congregation is made up of individuals who all come with their own sensitivities, lived experiences, dreams, and emotions? It feels like we are forever trying to right-size our dreams and expectations in order to move forward with more involvement and impact on justice work. I don't have answers or solutions, says Reverend Smidzik. My hope, though, is that you begin to understand where you might get tripped up and what might hold you back, and to encourage you and us to keep moving forward in ways that will create a flourishing world and the beloved community we dream of. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Social Justice for the Sensitive Soul, How to Change the World in Quiet Ways, offers 6 categories of activists beyond those who fearlessly march in protests and lobby in front of legislatures. There are a lot of categories. She names 6 possible ones, which I will share in a moment. Don't get too distracted by the details or definitions as I go through the list. Rather, think about how you might engage more deeply in justice work differently, more authentically, more deeply. Here are her 6 quiet ways to change the world. First, connectors. Connectors are relational activists whose interactions and conversations build the social capital necessary for change. Connectors are curious about others and use conversations to transform lives. This can be parenting as activism. Creatives. These artists and creators whose work inspires, sheds light, makes connections, and brings issues into the public consciousness. Art can speak to people's souls in ways other information can't, and so creatives encapsulate hope and vision for justice movements. A side story here to illustrate. Yesterday at our final proposed Article 2 reflection circle, participants spent a few minutes making art. a symbolic reflection of all we had been talking about and their hopes for the future of Unitarian Universalism. These are just some of them. This art said so much more than our words could have. As people shared, we found ourselves in each other's artwork, beauty and meaning beyond the written or spoken word. To engage in the creative process is to engage in social change. The third category of ways to quietly change the world, record keepers. Record keepers are the archivists who preserve essential information and hold our collective memory and history. They are journalists, documentarians, librarians, and more. They tell the truth about the past and help us understand the roots of injustice and how it has both changed and stayed the same over time. Builders. Builders are inventors, programmers, and engineers who center empathy as they develop society-changing products and technologies. These are the idea people who can help humanity through things like innovative technology that change lives without harming the earth. Equippers. The educators, mentors, and elders who build skills and knowledge within movements and shepherd the next generation of changemakers. Their teaching and mentoring creates social change through skill building. And finally, researchers. Researchers are data-driven individuals who utilize information as a persuasive tool to effect change and propose options for improvement. For example, academics and scholars who track what is really going on. They get to the root of the systemic issues instead of just superficial analysis. Imagine people in all of these roles, partnering with the protesters and movement leaders, extroverts, we still need you. Together creating social justice work that is effective, sustainable, relational, and even joyful. I have no idea if this is true or not, but if I were the author of Psalm for the Wild Built, that cozy little science fiction book I mentioned earlier, I can imagine feeling guilty for sitting and writing about a world that doesn't exist when there is so much pain in the world that does. But the author, Becky Chambers, is a creative whose work sheds light on a world we have never even let ourselves imagine. Her vision of a different future changes the present. Her work as a creative matters. What is your work to do, and what is our work to do? Some specific invitations for engagement. Our Land Acknowledgement and Beyond Working Group and our Green Team working on climate justice are active groups here at UUFN. And I want to also be clear that equity and justice should be woven into all facets of congregational life. Committee meetings, small group conversations, choir rehearsals, religious education, stewardship. Equity is not something we only do separately out there, separating it from the rest of our work in here. And I want to extend a special invitation to this event if you would like to get more involved. On March 14th, Side with Love is launching their 2024 UU the Vote campaign with a nationwide Zoom meeting. A message about this to all Unitarian Universalists from Nora Rossman, democracy strategist for Side with Love. This is Nora's words. It is an honor to invite you to the public launch of UU the Vote 2024. It seems like we've been talking about this election season for years, and now it has arrived. There are many things that we feel as we grow democracy in the world. I'm excited for the relationships we will build and nourish. I am frustrated by how fear and anxiety tells us to keep our heads down instead of living prophetically and become who we need to be in this moment. And I am heartbroken by a culture of violence that asks us to be indifferent to the suffering of our neighbors, our communities, and people around the world. But as a Unitarian Universalist with deep hope and vast belief in our people and our values, I remain ready. I am ready to pursue a more just world through the transformations of systems and of ourselves. I am ready for us to show one another exactly how powerful we can be if we do this work together. The launch is Thursday, March 14th at 6 p.m. Central Time. If the organizers, the connectors, the creators, the creatives, record keepers, builders, equippers, and researchers here at UUFN get involved, we can make a real difference in this election cycle where so much is at stake. We could help move our community and our nation towards equity. There will be more information in your email and in the March Reach for the link to sign up. Attending the launch does not require you sign up to do a whole bunch of other stuff. So you are welcome to attend the launch, and then we'll have a conversation about where we go together with You the Vote. Again, the words of Cheng Tosin. Finding your own way in social justice work requires courage, creativity, wisdom, and an openness to possibility. It requires shaking off the unhealthy and unrealistic expectations of others. It asks us to embrace our differences as beautiful and our unique personalities and perspectives as gifts, rather than comparing ourselves to others. It requires discernment, knowing when to step into the arena and when to step back, when to forge a new path and when to walk a well-worn trail. When we respond to what our bodies, hearts, life circumstances, and environment tell us about how we can sustainably and meaningfully serve the public good, in that moment, we have all we need and bring exactly who we are. Wherever you are on the spectrum of sensitive soul to ideal activist, or maybe both, what is your work to do now? Where are the barriers you can chip away at? How can you bring yourself, your true self, to this work? And how can we amplify this as a congregation so all may flourish? In every universe in which I am alive, it is because of other people. In every universe in which I am alive, it is because it is less because I could fight and more because I could forgive, because I could cooperate, because I could apologize, because I could dance. Will you join me in this prayer of longing by Karen G. Johnston? Spirit of life and love, our hearts are overflowing with lamentation and longing. Longing for a world with more hope and less despair. Longing for more happy hearts and fewer hungry mouths. Longing for a life of more connection and less isolation. Longing for a brave love, a growing seed within us spreading far and wide. Longing for a future of less consumption and more compassion. Actually, longing for that now. Longing for a government that quells hate and violence rather than generates it. Longing for a nation that acknowledges its injustices and works to make them right. Longing for a present with each of us doing what is ours to do to resist racism and all forms of systemic oppression. Longing for companions to give us courage, that we might be the people these times require to bring about the beloved community. Amen. May it be so, and may we make it so. Please rise in body or spirit for our hymn of affirmation, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. You may be seated for our closing benediction. We must make this world safer for our transgender and gender expansive beloveds. We need to change our consumerist mindset that is destroying the earth. We call for a ceasefire in Gaza, and we condemn the rise of anti-Semitism, and we mark with horror the 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The attack on reproductive rights, the dehumanization of immigrants, white supremacy culture, police violence, the violence of wealth disparity, traumatized kids wondering where they're going to get their next meal. I could go on. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Even if you cannot sing like angels, even if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Go forth and do your part. We join together in the words for the extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And one reminder before we sing our blessing one to another. The Building Visions meeting will be after the service today. All are welcome to attend if you just want to learn more or you've been following the process for a long time. The Zoom room will stay open, so those on Zoom can also attend. And now please rise in body or spirit, and with your hand over your heart, holding a hand of those next to you or whatever posture is most comfortable, we sing words of blessing one to another. peace.
Long time summer. Oh, I'm good. I'm glad that's yours. I'm like, oh no, like it could have been over, 2 months or something.
I get coffee fruits every now and then.
And I took a seat.
Hey, you two, a nice job. Wonderful, wonderful.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I had 3 St. Olaf College students over yesterday. Really got to know Charlie. Really, they spent 4 hours with us, lunch, the games, and everything. So I was so proud to be sitting by Charlie as he spoke.